Okay, we are live. We'll call this order the Land Use and Planning Committee to meeting together. The occurrence of this meeting was posted in the clerk's office, which met all the requirements of public notice. Supervisors Gallotsberg, McCulloch, and Vespalic are here. Mr. Strupp is excused. And I believe we have no one joining us on Zoom. Is that correct, Mike?
No.
All right. If you would, please, we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As there is going to be a public hearing this morning, we will forego discussion on the other items until the hearing has taken place. Mr. Fody, please read the notice regarding the public hearing.
Notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held at a meeting of the Washington County Land Use and Planning Committee in room 1019, the Washington County Government Center, 432 East Washington Street, West Bend, Wisconsin, on Thursday, September 15, 2022 at 7:30 a.m. There will be heard and considered the petition of James Quigley for a conditional use permit for associated filling, grading, and excavating of greater than 15,000 square feet within 300 feet of the ordinary high watermark OHWM of Stony Creek, construction of access lanes, landscape improvements, structural modifications in Wildlife Pond in a shoreland, wetland, and floodplain zoning district, location town of Farmington, address 8939 County Highway XX, Fredonia, Wisconsin, 53021, dated this 26th day of August 2022.
Thank you, sir. I will declare the hearing open. We will take comments from the public, but ask that discussions be limited to 3 minutes per person. Are there anyone here to address this from the gallery? Hearing no comments, we will close the public hearing and ask for a motion and second from the committee so we can discuss further. Is there a motion and a second? Mr. Vespalic, Mr. Berg? We'll also at this point in time ask Mr. Sebo to outline the discussion points and will then move to questions from the committee members. Mr. Sebo, please, sir.
Yeah, a little disturbing that the applicant didn't show up today. So because this is a lot of this project is after the fact work that we're trying to get resolved, much less a wildlife pond.
Oh, no, this is Tom. Tom's with Mountain Metro Bikers.
Morning, everyone. Hold the presses, but no, we're good. So we've been working with basically Quigley and his engineer going back to June of 2021 on this wildlife pond that he wanted to do, and he was proposing another pond, going back and forth with DNR permits and what's allowed, what's not allowed, because he was finding a lot in the floodplain. And then they pulled back on a larger pond, and they moved forward with the wildlife pond. And in the process of starting to review photos and everything else, all of a sudden we noticed all this other work that he had done in the floodplain, in the wetland. So as the report says, Joe Steyer and I went out there and met with him, went through the regulations, went through what he needs to do to try to fix things, because he did put a new, basically gravel path through the wetland up to an existing bridge that was there that was used for a snowmobile bridge. Historically, you go back, there was kind of always a bridge, even the farm was using it, but as equipment got bigger, the bridge didn't serve the purpose, so they actually started driving through the stream as a ford. And that was, many, many years ago before regulations and everything else happened. So staff do not have any problem with the wildlife pond as we proposed. It's just a wetland scrape kind of, it's less than 5 feet deep. DNR requires that if you're going to dig a pond in a wetland, you cannot change the classification of a wetland. And a wetland, how they define a wetland is 5 feet deep of water or less with gentle side slopes. So you can easily have animals and stuff work their way in and out of it. So he's doing all that appropriately and stuff for this. This is, and he is fixing this up. This is a wedding venue place with the barn. So he already has weddings and stuff going on. So only guessing that he moved forward with all the gravel lane and bridge and everything else to promote his business and to be able to take better pictures, but never even sought to ask questions about any of that work. So as of now, like the report said, we do have a wetland delineation that's done, just waiting for DNR concurrence on that, which came very well in favor for them. So the new gravel path is not in the wetland anymore. It's outside the wetland. Even on the maps, the attached maps, it shows where the new wetland line is. So basically he's safe from there, but the gravel path that he did is basically just added a lot of gravel. So you can almost imagine that he added a weir to that entire floodplain that goes across that area, which you can't have any impact on the flood because it's actually a floodway. It's moving water through there. So we can't have any impact on the floodway by adding that weir. In most essence, it should impact the floodway and actually make the flood higher behind that weir, but they'll have to do that through engineering studies. And the engineer has the studies and stuff from the DNR and also that covered bridge structure. There was another snowmobile bridge that doesn't really show up. Maybe it does show up on the pictures. That's further north of this, but still on the Quigley property. Oh yeah, it does show up in the bottom picture. I believe he's asking the snowmobile organization to remove that bridge because they just went and added that bridge without permits for themselves either. And they should even know better that you just can't add bridges across streams without getting the proper permits. So like I said, the recommendation is to approve the wildlife scrape as proposed for the wildlife pond, contingent upon that he at least satisfies and dots all his I's and crosses his T's on the other issues that he has for after the fact stuff. And mainly it's the floodplain study that we're at now, but yet still we're waiting for DNR concurrence on the wetland delineation.
Are you expecting DNR will concur with this?
Yeah, I expect they will concur, yeah.
Questions or comments from the committee?
So a motion would be conditional based upon the DNR approval, right? Because they have to have that for us to grant, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, yeah, the way.
Yes.
Yep.
That's item number one. DNR provides concurrence with the wetland delineation. That's number one in the. Questions or comments? All right, thank you, Paul. We have a motion and a second to approve the conditional use permit for James Quigley, including the implementation of the erosion control plan for the wildlife pond with the condition that construction of this pond is not to start until all outstanding shoreline, wetland, and floodplain zoning violations are resolved, which include, number one, the DNR provides concurrence with the wetland delineation. Number two, the fill associated with the gravel lane and snowmobile bridges do not impact the floodplain as determined by hydrologic and hydraulic analysis of the regional flood. And three, Chapter 30 permits are required for the bridges by the Department of Natural Resources. Oversight on this will be provided by Mr. Sebo's office. All in favor of approving this, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposing?
We need the motion first.
Oh, sorry.
I thought we had the motion
We already
earlier.
had a motion in a second.
Yeah, right. These two had motioned in.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got a motion in a second. You're good.
So we all signify in saying aye, is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah, yes.
None
Aye.
opposed? All right, thank you. The permit is issued. We will now have our consent agenda and review our discussion items and then recess and reconvene at Heritage Trails County Park Shooting Range when the group will get a complete briefing on plans for activities there. Let's move the consent agenda. With all that said, we'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. A motion and second, please. Mr. Gallus, Mr. Vespalik, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Consent agenda is approved. Discussion items, which are all in your packet. We'll start out with the Community Development Quarterly Report. I understand, Jamie, you're going to lead this discussion in Deb's absence.
I am, yes. So the report is in your packet. So again, the purpose of the entrepreneurial operating system updates is just to kind of give you a flavor of the major initiatives that are being worked on in each department. In this case, the Community Development Department, which is one of the departments that reports to me, you kind of see the first sheet, which is more the managing growth, so it doesn't manage us planning initiatives on that page. Are there any questions on what you see on this page? One point I will point out here is you see the gray not started boxes. These initiatives collectively on this page to the community development planner, that is a position we currently have vacant and we have been trying to fill. So I just point that out because this page has been is the lowest priority of the initiatives in this department. And so you may start to see that come to fruition in future updates depending on how the staffing, the success or not of the staffing.
Mr. Galloway.
I do have the question about the intent. So I have to assume, I didn't see it mentioned in here, but this has to align with the smart growth planning? Or?
So are you referring to the completing the comprehensive plan ordinance consistency item?
No, so managing growth of the community, talk about encourage responsible community development, all municipal partners living up to their vision, et cetera, et cetera. Well, we have this, whatever smart growth state initiative for 2 decades now. Does that align? Is there alignment there?
Yeah, so the county's role in this is a little bit more artistic. We don't have zoning authority. And so each community develops their own and then their own smart growth. And then the county's comprehensive plan has all of them and basically shows those communities' smart growth plans collectively together. One of the initiatives you see here, the one about boundary agreements, for example, on those smart plans, is essentially looking at that for every community and identifying where there are issues with overlap and or competition that exists, unresolved areas for opportunity across various jurisdictions. So that is one of the county's goals in that area. I don't know if that answers your question, but yes, kind of, but we just assemble all the different smart growth plans into our comprehensive plan.
Yep.
And then the municipalities and towns have responsibility for keeping those up to date.
And then the last comment, because this has come up a few times here, is how can we lessen some bureaucracy? Is that part of the initiative as well? Meaning sounds like some things we talked about that with some rule changes staff could do versus coming to this committee or other committees?
Not in this particular initiative.
Okay, thank you.
And then the second one is related to brownfields. And the third one is related to the social capital initiative as part of Our Great Community campaign that the county executive has talked about. And the fourth page is really all about the next generation housing initiatives. So I'd be happy to answer any specific questions if I can, or if there are topics in these areas that the committee wants a more detailed overview of, that would be helpful to understand too as we move forward kind of planning agendas.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then, Ms. Martin, Register of Deeds report, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Chair.
Get a little organized here. So this is my first time appearing before the committee with the EOS documents that you have here. As Jamie said, I'd be happy to answer any questions that are there. We have Register of Deeds and real property listing in our department. Register of Deeds is land records and vital records. The page 11 and 12 go over some of the initiatives that we would like to see happen in our department. I kind of outlined over the years that we have taken advantage of any new technologies and implemented, streamlined everything. So we've already done most of our homework on this. As technology advances, we can continue to put things online that we have had scanned years ago and make available for our business partners and the general public. Genealogists really enjoy that. the records, searching back in their family history and farms and land and everything. So I kind of, some of these projects are on track, some of them are off track based on a vendor did not have the technology available. But we're continuing to always enhance the records. If anybody has been in our office, we have all those old books along the walls and everything, but we have to maintain the history of the county and all the land records. So we really focus on continuing to put the names and history out there for individuals. So with that being said, I don't know if anybody has any specific questions on 11 or 12. With name indexes, rescanning, enhancing.
Yeah, so I think the last meeting or so, right, we are doing the digitizing. Is that underway then?
For which specific?
Which one was it? It was records.
The treasurer is also working on scanning all the historical tax records. So is that what you're referring to maybe?
So separate.
Yes.
From you. I thought there was a little overlap.
Yes. So one of the last things that I would like to point out is on page 12 is something like a life goal of mine to work with the IRS. When I became registered back in 2003, I quickly realized that working with the IRS and getting federal tax liens recorded in our office was a nightmare. I actually sought out and found a liaison agent and had worked with him for about 10 years and really streamlined, smooth things out. Each local IRS office used to submit paper documents to the Register of Deeds, and they continue to do so. But we have streamlined the payment of it, and they require ACH payment for the recording fees, and they have done so for probably 8 to 10 years already. Knowing that Wisconsin is all 72 counties electronically record federal tax liens, it's just, to me, it's a no-brainer. Why don't they do it that way? Because they still snail mail paper back and forth. So I have struck out so many times and gone through so many different liaison individuals, but I keep reaching out and keep poking that bear. Last year, working with my Property Records Industry Association board members for that national association that I am on, I was able to get through an American land title attorney that recommended asking one of the congressmen for a report on the IRS procedures and policies. They actually did get the report back, and the recommendation is for the IRS to move forward with it, but it didn't mandate them to do it. So you take 2 steps forward and 6 backwards. So you're going to see this one, and you're probably going to see it off track. If I have something that, when we advance further, they always had every excuse. No, we're short agents. All 72 counties have to accept documents electronically, and they keep coming up with different excuses, but I keep, saying, well, we're ready. All 72 are here. So if anybody ever hears anything about federal tax liens and an IRS connection, please let me know, because I have probably talked to 25 to 30 different sources over the years, and that's one of my goals I will accomplish. So eventually. Any other questions about 11 or 12?
Perhaps with the federal government doubling the size of the IRS, part of that problem will go away.
You would think so, but I don't think that's the agents in the department that I'm looking at. So.
You don't work with the armed agents.
I know. So, but it was encouraging when now we can point to a report that said, your recommendation is to do this. Let's just work together and figure out how we can do it. And we'll be happy to pilot it for you. I have an electronic recording vendor that is willing to work with them and set things up. And with all the connections we've made over the years, we could make it happen probably soon.
Right. I was just going to say, it's what's the stick for them? What's in it for me, right? So if you can demonstrate that they don't have to do a whole lot of extra work, that it's laid out for them.
streamlining.
integration. We could get Dave there to help with the info security side of it and, slide it in. We've done that in banking industry, worked hand in hand with FCC and OCC for efforts and improvements. Because guess what? When you're in an industry and you're doing it, so you guys are on the other end. You have it, you're there, let's just share it.
Yeah, well, the main agency is the Internal Revenue Service. They have a processing company called Beckley Financial out in Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, that actually process all the federal tax liens and distribute them out nationally. I've been around a while and I've gone through probably 6 to 7 different governmental liaisons, and just when you think you're making progress, then that person retires or quits or moves to another department, so then you have to start over again. So it will streamline things for them, knowing that there are only, I believe it's 3, maybe 2 states that do not accept documents electronically. It's no longer a pipe dream, it's a reality. This can happen, let's just move forward. So if I have more progress on that, I will be happy to report on that one, so.
Are you saying that this would actually, what you're working with them would be a pilot program?
Yes, because they are not submitting federal tax liens electronically to any state. And I just don't understand it. It would streamline their processes. It would put the liens on record right away. They would get confirmation right away. It eliminates paper shuffling is really in reality what it's doing.
Please keep us up to date on this, because if your office initiates a pilot program that the IRS can accept on a regional and national basis, I think there's some strong kudos here for you and the leadership of the group here at Washington County.
There's a lot of players involved, and I will be happy to. I keep poking, like I said, and it's, you let it sit for a couple of months and then you poke again. So yes, we have offered to pilot the program. We have offered to work with one specific electronic recording vendors, even though there's probably 10 nationally. But this one basically offers electronic recording in all the states that have electronic recording. So, and it's actually a Wisconsin native. So he's very accessible and I can reach him on his cell phone at any point, so.
Thank you.
All right.
Any other questions or comments for Sharon? Thank you, Sharon.
All right. Well, I have, we're gonna go on to page
All right.
13. Is the real property listing. I apologize on Brian's behalf. He is out of the office today. Real property listing takes the documents that we record and makes changes to the tax book. But they also work with GIS and the county surveyor. They house all the plats of survey that surveyors go out when a homeowner hires them to do for staking out of homes, to split up properties, to create certified survey maps, subdivisions, things like that. So surveyors are supposed to turn in the plats of survey, which are not recordable, but they turn in these sheets of paper of these drawings to the county surveyor, which is housed actually in real property listings. So they work together, and now we have quite a few local surveyors and area surveyors that submit them to the website, and paper shuffling is gone again. So those plats of survey are available as soon as real property listing finishes the indexing and uploads the image. So we're making more and more things available for our citizens and business partners. So again, with some of these projects are on track, some of them are off track. One of the things I want to highlight on here is the electronic entry of manufacturing values. It seems to be a paper process with the Department of Revenue. Up to this point, that is the only thing that's still done in paper. Everything else is submitted electronically. Brian was at a real property listing conference last week, and the Department of Revenue strongly hinted that they think they figured it out, so we could electronically submit all this data to them instead of shuffling paper again with that. If you have any questions regarding real property, I could try to answer them. Otherwise, we can follow up with Brian on those questions.
Questions or comments?
And then just the last thing that kind of gets lost in the shuffle is vital records. With the Real ID deadline in May of 2023, we have had statewide issuance of birth and marriage certificates for quite a few years already. So we are able to help basically anyone who was born or married in Wisconsin get a certified copy. And we have been able to do this for many years. When COVID hit, we were one of the few county offices that were open. So we were happy to help anyone, regardless of where they were married or born or married. So we are just continuing to try and figure out how to get the word out. We have done press releases, we have done social media, we talk to groups, nonprofit groups. I mentioned I'm a member of the West Bend Chamber of Commerce and an ambassador. I had a quarterly meeting and I brought this up again and they're like, really? So spread the word. If anybody needs a certified copy, send them our way. When people call, we always tell them, ask, where do they live? Because if they live in Green Bay or if they live up in St. Croix, St. Croix County, we tell them, we'd love to see you, but don't drive down here. Go to that county office. It's really not about the revenue. It's about, helping the constituents get what they need quickly. So I am also working with the county executive's office and Lonnie and Fran to come up with a plan to figure out how to do more education for citizens and, that this is available. Please use it. So any other questions? Otherwise, I encourage you to come up and visit our office. Anytime, we'd be happy to host you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
I guess, Jamie, at this point in time, the Heritage Trails update regarding planning and mining feasibility, is that a report for here? Or is this all going to be
That's a
covered up?
report for here.
All right, please.
So yeah, just to clarify for anybody in the audience, the shooting range tour is actually about a separate topic happening out at Heritage Trails.
Okay.
The mining is not real, they're in the same location, so they're in theory not completely independent of one another, but there's really not going to be any discussion of mining today on site. As it relates to that, I kind of wanted to just, for the committee's sake and also the public's sake, make sure this was on a public agenda before we put an RFP out the door, which is planned to happen this week after this meeting. So we are now again looking at a mining feasibility and basically park plan out at Heritage Trails County Park again. So for the committee's knowledge, we tried this in March and April of 2019. And we tried it very differently. We did a lot of neighbor meetings and public meetings because we actually ended up having to do some zoning changes. And there was significant, there is actually an authorizing resolution already on the books for this project. So there was a significant amount of public meetings and neighbor meetings before we did the RFP, which to gauge interest with the private sector. The benefit to that was we have a lot of information on what the concerns are. We have a lot of good neighbor and stakeholder lists already assembled. One of the things that was hard during that time period was that we had a lot of time invested in hypothetical conversations, and then we actually ended up never moving forward because nobody was interested. And so that has kind of influenced the approach we're taking this time, where we are putting out an RFP once again, and I'll explain kind of why we think the timing might be good. That's a little bit more vague, which gives a little bit more flexibility to the industries. We did have 32 industries at our pre-proposal meeting when we did this in 2019. And then for a variety of reasons, only one actually submitted and we never ended up moving forward. So really, I think in my mind, the two major changes are our plan is really a lot different. It's to gauge interest from the private sector and then work with them collectively to start the process by getting all of the stakeholder feedback with them. That allows them not only to get it firsthand and hear the concerns or desires or visions or challenges, and help put a plan together that addresses those things. But it also can reduce the speculation of, is this even going to impact me? Are you even going to be by me? Are you even going to disrupt this mountain bike trail? Because some of those things may not even happen, and then we're able to just have that conversation in real time. So we're putting out the RFP first. We're gonna see if there is any interest in having stakeholder meetings. We've assembled a list of the stakeholders, including this committee and other local officials, preliminarily talking with the Village of Slinger, the Village of Richfield, and the Town of Polk. Some of what we want to make sure we capture is park usage and the desires of park users in the county. So things like park commissions or people that are really interested in what a plan for a collective park might look like. Law enforcement as it relates to the shooting range, the disc golf community, mountain bike community, one of who is here today. So they've been following this conversation very closely. They have a huge interest in this, as do we. And then the neighbors being the other big one that is going to be required within 90 days of us essentially selecting anyone. The approval on this is a park master plan, is a park reclamation plan. There's not a lot of this type of activity and restrictions. And so if this even moves forward, this is just kind of a very high level, like, hey, we're starting to have this conversation. And then I did just want to address why we're doing this from my perspective. So a couple of things have been happening, and they're somewhat independent of each other, but related. The first is that we rezoned this property for temporary extractive uses to develop a park. When we did that, we sent a signal to the mining community that this land is zoned for this type of activity. That's not a minor thing. There isn't a lot of land out there zoned for, sand and gravel extraction. So that community knew about this, knows about this, and continues to talk about this. They have the core boring samples of the material layers and what it looks like. And so there has been chatter for the past year related to, are you guys ever gonna look at this again? When are you gonna look at this again? The market's changing, the technology's changed, things are changing, are you gonna do this again? So we have that happening. We also have with that, my opinion on the matter as Chief Community Development Officer and the county executive's opinion, which is that this was a good idea and there's potential here. The county board approved it in the past, so we think this is a good idea. Then over here, we have a very significant investment happening in the property with the mountain bikers and the disc golfers. And you guys toured these trails, so you know what I'm talking about. And they are cool. And there's some really good potential for the future vision of this, growing this, continuing to support this. And we're at a point where we're currently analyzing the data that's coming in from the mountain bike trails, and the county's gonna need to decide, and I believe say, these are in our park, we have an interest, we're seeing, money come in from these parks, what is our position gonna be, and are we gonna take a more helpful approach to Metro mountain bikers is really the best way I can say this. However, here's me then sitting there going, oh, well, this mining's gonna maybe come back. I know it's gonna come back, it's just a matter of time. And I don't really feel good putting a lot of money or having the community put a lot of money into lower lands or other areas without a full comprehensive plan that the county has bought into for the property. Where are the trails gonna go? When are they gonna go in? How does that relate to other activities on the park? What about the disc golfers? The disc golfers are kind of fighting with the mountain bikers. And so, the last thing I wanna do is have the community make an investment or make a commitment only to then have to swing 2 years from now and say, nope, now we're gonna mine it. right? So I think the timing is really good to, I like to use the term, kind of put this conversation to bed. We are doing it much more vaguely this time to see if there's even any interest at all, right? There's not a lot of parameters on the interest in terms of last time we said things like it has to be 10 years, it has to be a lake, it has to be this amount of material. You know, these are going to be the expectations. And so a lot of the feedback we got from the firms was, we can't even, 10 years is laughable. We couldn't, there's no way we could do that. Like that lake was impossible. You were asked, you didn't really know what you were doing, which was partially true. So that's kind of why I think it's important to bring it up now. I think we're at a really pivotal point for the trails out there, and I look forward to the day where we all can just talk openly about the fact that, you know, this might happen out there, and so we've been kind of starting to do that. We know on this project that we are going to run into the neighbors again. There was a lot of propaganda created last time about the county's, you know, political interests and, you know, doing this for the money, and we're, you know, so poor that we have to, you know, sell off our property. And so there's a lot of chatter that has the potential to surround this topic. So I just ask that as, you know, representatives of the county, you take that in mind when you're hearing those things and just kind of try to stick to what I'm trying to tell people right now is I'm not even sure if this is a good idea. I don't have enough information, and I don't believe you have enough information, and I don't believe the mountain bikers have enough information or the neighbors have enough information to even really one way or the other. So the RFP really is that. It's kind of a fact-finding mission in terms of, you know, is this something we're going to do? And I think the county board and the county executive and myself, we've already said we're open to this. And so I've been kind of trying to say we are open to this if we can come up with a good plan that works. So that's kind of, I think, the position that we're in is, you know, if this might be a good idea to develop a park to the tune of $3 to $7 million for the park system, and we don't really know what that looks like until we explore it further. So does anybody have any questions about where we're at in the mining feasibility process? I know I was just talking for a long time.
Yes, I do. You've indicated, I believe, in here, this document or previous documents, that the technology has changed over the last 2 or 3 years, where someone can come in now and really do a very positive assessment of the value of that gravel and sand. In your own opinion only, do you feel that this will go forward as a gravel sand quarry, or are you expecting that the RFPs will just come back and say no interest? Or don't we know?
That it's hard to say, but I'm expecting that we will have 1 to 3 respondents. I'm expecting that this will result in a conversation that answers some of those detailed questions. The hard part is we don't know the how. So at the end of the day, it is going to be, you know, how comfortable is this committee, are the stakeholders, is the county executive with the specifics of the plan? You know, what is happening out there? And I think that will be the point of, does this go forward or not? You know, is it a good enough idea that people are comfortable with the activity and the response and the plan? So I think we'll have the conversation is the answer to that. I think we will engage somebody to hopefully help us have the conversation.
We could get to the point where we get some positive RFPs and then develop a plan, but then this committee could ultimately decide, well, yeah, it's a great plan, but we don't accept it. We want to keep it the way it is. I mean, in theory, that could happen. Is that correct?
That is correct. The authorizing resolution still requires approval related to the plan. And I mean, we can go back and forth about the details of what that is, right? Of the phasing or the timing or the, but ultimately what happens here is money is going to come into the county, and then money is going to go out. So anytime that happens, so for example, this is just totally made up, but if we take in a bunch of money and then we want to reinvest it in mountain bike trails, that is a decision of the county board of supervisors. We, in large sums, I mean, dollars here and there, I can argue if it's within my budget, I could do it, but the types of investments and projects we're talking about, capital projects and, you know, possibly a real plan for that park out there, are all, you know.
I think we should stay away from the hypotheticals. This will come before you guys when as.
Well, and that's where the
as
trap we get
comes
into,
and
right? The
things like that.
hypothetical discussions that are hard to have.
Mr. Gallant, you had a question?
Not a question, it's more of a comment. I mean, back to the, I guess, topic at matter is it's a feasibility studies that allow us to gain information that we can make informed decisions about the use of that park and whether it aligns with what the board did a number of years ago, authorizing the use of that property for mining, as you said, or rezoning, and does it all still align with the county's interest? So speculative is one thing, right? But if we don't have data to understand how feasible it is, whether it be a revenue generating for the park system or whatever the end result would be, and the word harmony comes into mind with all other stakeholders, right? So that's all going to be part of it.
Right, exactly. And adding to that, I mentioned the authorizing resolution. I also have future meetings already scheduled because that authorizing resolution says some things, and your question about is the intent accurate, right? And that we need to be on something like this, we need to make sure we have our details checked and things are correct and we're not. So I say that now, but there may be 10 other things we need to do that I'm not even aware of yet.
Mr. Vespalman, question?
I just wanted to, because I wasn't part of the 2019, is this something that somebody came to us and said there's sand and gravel there and we'd like it, or have we initiated this? And I guess my question is, how did this start? Because I wasn't part of that. And
You know, I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but we have a couple employees who have been with the county for a very long time. So this used to be a sand and gravel pit.
Okay.
And then that part got turned into the shooting range. So we're going to see that old gravel pit today. When that happened, and since we acquired the property, there were certain characteristics of the property and permitting and closures that have stayed with it. And so we've had employees actually say, and this is how this happened. We were in the park's fiscal sustainability planning. You know, how are we going to self-fund? How are we going to create what about if we create an endowment? And literally somebody said like, well, just sell the gravel that's underneath Heritage Trails and build a lake, build a future park. And your problems are solved. And that was, I think, just how the idea came forward initially. But then we were like, well, that's actually not the worst idea. I wonder if there's interest. But then we had this, and we sold this to the county board and the community at the time, this vision of a lake, like the quarries turned over, Duck Creek Quarry in Howard, Lanning Quarry in, I think Menominee Park has one.
Foxbrook Park.
Foxbrook Park, right? And so we were like, well, that's literally what we're talking about here in this case. The challenges of the property might not make that exactly feasible for this property, but that was kind of the concept that was, oh yeah, and then a couple of the companies saying, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can do that. Then the county invested $30,000 in borings. So all that conversation happened before we pulled the material. When we pulled the material, we have it layered out. We have engineering reports now that are going out with the RFP that actually show them the quality and the content of that material, which I think started to change the discussion a little bit on what it's really worth.
okay.
So you may hear rumblings of, that material's no good. And that's coming from a place of the material, depending on what your company is and what product you're selling and what markets you're in, it isn't good. So it depends on the company. So yeah, more to come on this topic.
Okay.
The town of Polk had this at their board meeting on Tuesday night. So just a heads up, the whole community this isn't everybody's favorite idea locally. So heads up about that. Send them to me. I'm happy to talk to anyone.
Any other questions or comments regarding this topic? With that, I will announce that our next meeting date will be Thursday, October 20th at 7:30 a.m. here in this facility. We will now recess and reconvene at Heritage Trails County Park. When we're out there, obviously, we're not going to have tables and chairs, so we will have an informal but yet official gathering of this group. We'll somehow gavel ourselves together and have discussion. There are no voting items on the discussion out there today. It's strictly an informational gathering, but it is open to the public. And I guess with that, Jamie, does anyone need directions?
I need, if you have the ad.